On today's podcast, we have Hugh Carnahan, investor, YouTuber, homestead extraordinaire. He went from 0 to over 200 doors and became a millionaire in just 3 short years. As always, like and subscribe to the PaperTrails Podcast and enjoy this conversation with Hugh Carnahan. Hugh, I must ask you a question. How did you get started in real estate?
I was trying to buy solar panels, and the solar panel guy, he was the owner of the company, and I asked him a question. I said, "Hey, man, if this were your money, what would you do?" And he looked at me and he said, "I would not buy my solar panels. I would use your money to buy real estate, and I'd use that, let that pay for your electricity." And I was like, that's a very weird thing for a solar panel guy to say. And then, so we got into a big conversation. I was trying to provide him value in other ways because my background is lean manufacturing based. So I was trying to help him with his business. So we built a rapport over the last few weeks. Then he was like, "Hey, don't buy my solar panels. Go buy real estate. Go to YouTube, type in the word BRRRR and bigger pockets." That's the only thing he said to me. And 4 months later, I had 26 houses.
Wow. I mean, it's crazy that he said that he's so unincentivized to say that. Right. Did you ever end up doing deals with him down the line? Did you keep in touch with him?
We're actually still good friends now. I joke that I put him out of business because, he went out of business a few months later.
Yeah, he's a terrible salesman.
He's a terrible, but really he was honest, and he got into another business that basically serviced the solar panel. So there was no money to be made for him anymore, I think, from the solar panel, like selling solar panels. He then sold services to the solar panel guys, like people who sold. So he just changed up his business model. But
So what did he do before real estate?
So before real estate, I was full-time in manufacturing, right? So I went to college for software and information systems, went into the software tech industry, worked for an oil company, worked for business-to-business company called ServiceNow. And woke up, and I just realized it was like, hey, is this it? Like, I did all the things I was supposed to. Go get a job, get good grades so you can get a job, those things. And I was just kind of woke up and was like, there's no way I'm doing this the rest of my life. But when I had that epiphany, I was in manufacturing. And so, there's a family business, and, I got brought back into the family business. And when I did that, I started learning. The company was effectively leaderless for a long, long time. And when my father passed away in 2014. It was 2017 before I started. So for 3 years or so, there was no leadership. And I basically started learning about something called lean manufacturing. And in the manufacturing space, what most people don't realize, however you're watching this, the cameras, what you're sitting on at home, if you have a table or whatever, it's hyper competitive. I mean, most companies are operating off of like a 1% and 2% margins. Like, they're not making very much profit. Maybe some of the outliers, maybe Apple's making some good profit, but for the bulk part, because of like Walmart and stuff, everything's a commodity, right? Because of Amazon, everything's a competitor. It's hyper, and all you got to do, anyone can buy raw materials and turn it into a thing, right? And then you get copycats. And so everything's a fight and struggle. And so lean, and what I later found was 2-second lean manufacturing or industrial manufacturing practices evolved to compete against a highly competitive market just so you don't go bankrupt. And that was kind of my background. That's my unfair advantage that I later, moved over to real estate and was able to just kill it.
So how does that help in real estate? So with manufacturing, they're only going off of 1% to 2% margins, which is not a lot. So if there's any downturn whatsoever,
right,
they just go under, or
yeah. So like, you could be an 80-year company with like no debt, but if you got 1,500 employees, if you have 1,000, 10,000 employees, I mean, those are really high margins. So if you have material costs, or COVID happens, or strategic political things that other countries might do to target manufacturing your country, which is something that China does a lot, then you're gonna go out of business in like a 3 or 4 month runway, even if you have no debt and a massive thing. Some people probably have better margins and worse, but if they include their overhead, manufacturing is super competitive. So 2-second lean or lean manufacturing processes was birthed by Toyota in the 50s. It goes a little bit back. I mean, a little older than that, but lean today, as we know it, goes back to Toyota in the 50s, the 40s, because they were broke. Banks were like, they made looms, like stuff that makes clothes and stuff. And they were like, hey, Dad, I want to make cars. And they're like, who the hell are you? Like, you're not Mitsubishi, you're not a national company. We don't trust you. You never made a car. Why the hell would we give you any money? And so out of necessity, lean manufacturing was born because it keeps inventory costs low. So you have more operating capital and you catch defects a lot sooner. So all of my teaching and learnings go back to lean, and then they go back to the Toyota TPS. Toyota
and lean manufacturing, LEAN, like
LEAN, yeah.
Okay, so
which
like
is different
low
in real
fat.
estate than low fat, as opposed to like LEIN, which is
Like putting a lean on your manufacturing,
not that
putting a note on it. Okay, so basically with all those systems and processes, any slight change to your overhead is super critical. I mean, you have to watch all your numbers.
You have to watch your numbers. You have to react quickly. So at the height of my production, I was second in command over in China. We had a factory in China, 350 workers. And, you have to coordinate let's say $7 million of raw materials through 350 workers and turn it into $12 million of product through all of the semi-finished product, hope you get it to, the port on time and out of the country, and then hope there's no defects in it. And so that's a tall order to consistently do all the time. And there's so much waste in that. And, if you have a defect, like let's say you had, $100,000 worth of vinyl and you're cutting an order. We made boat seats and chairs. You're cutting an order and then you screw the order up, right? The machine was uncalibrated or the blade was dull. So now all the orders, and you don't find that out. Now you just scrapped out, 20 grand, 30 grand worth of raw material. But that's not the hard part. The hard part is you already put the labor into it. You then catch it too late. You then back up all your other orders. Then you spend the money on the raw material again, and then you eat up the labor again, because you're not going to not pay your workers, even though, it was a defect. And then what you thought was going to be a profitable month, poof, you're in the hole for 3 months.
Wow. And
so that's the environment that you're constantly working in.
What did the Trump tariffs, which I think it was 2017 or 2018.
Yes.
What did the Trump tariffs do?
So this is actually, they probably saved the United States. I like them or hate them, whatever. The Trump tariffs actually prepared the United States for COVID. And it was not intentional. It wasn't planned, right? And what it did was manufacturers were caught with their pants down. You go to Walmart and everything costs 25% more because of tariffs now. They pass that on to the customers. U.S. companies were like, oh, we didn't realize how much we were depending on China, and a government that doesn't necessarily have our interests, right? And we're all shareholder driven, follow the money. Well, when that happened, suddenly overnight, a lever was flipped, and now we're not profitable. So the U.S. actually started about 6 months before multi-sourcing from different countries and reshoring a bunch of efforts, and it fostered a lot of things. When that happened, when COVID happened, we actually were ahead of the curve because we were already multi-sourced. And so a lot of U.S. manufacturers started to multi-source and pull demand out of China. Well, China was hurting. The Chinese companies were hurting, right? And so the EU and Europe stepped in, and the UK stepped in to fill that demand, right? Because prices were crashing. And then COVID happened. And so the EU was hit way harder, and the US side was hit, less hard. Like everyone was hit really harshly, but we were slightly more prepared, right? And it was pretty cool.
So did you keep that company in China? Did it go under? What's the story?
So it's still there for basically safety reasons. There's a lot of xenophobia that's being stroked in China. The narrative is foreigners are bad, and there's a lot of saber rattling that goes on from the government that distracts the locals from anything that's going on population-wise. And they have full control of media. And so for safety purposes, the company still exists, but that's where I cut my teeth. It still exists. It's doing okay. But I don't go to China anymore.
Do you still run it? Is it fully delegated? Do you have other people in place?
I basically stepped out of that company, and the rest of my family's running it still. So.
Okay. So you got into real estate. In the first year in real estate, you did 26 deals, 26 units?
So I did 26 units as my first thing. I had zero experience. The first thing I did was buy, that was the first house I ever bought, was I bought 26 low-income properties that were in really bad shape in low-income areas.
And were those each individual properties, or are we counting doors?
It was 26 individual houses. That was my first deal I ever did. No experience, didn't know what I was doing.
Tell me how you locked that up. Was it a portfolio? Was it?
I'd like to step back 1 second because that was like 6 months after the solar panel conversation. So I want to tell you about what happened in between there. So I went to the BRRRR strategy on YouTube and Bigger Pockets. And then after that, I went to the beginning of the podcast. And I was like, and that's when I clicked, right? I kind of woke up, this can't be, maybe I was already feeling that a little bit before. This can't be it for life. I'm waking up, I'm doing the daily grind. This can't be all the things. And so early BP was all teaching about, normal people. Actually, most of BP is normal people and how they were successful. I didn't know much, but I tried this. And so I crushed the content at 2x speed because at the time I didn't know about 3x speed. And so I crushed the
2x speed is so BS, by the way. But
at 2x speed, I listened to the podcast from 1 all the way to like 348. So I caught up. And this is like 2019. It was like maybe it was like August of 2018. 2019. And so I just listened 3 hours a night, every day of the week, and then 6 hours on weekends. So I was crushing content. And I had personal mentors. I had a personal mentor, 2 personal mentors with me whole time. It was Brandon Turner and David Green. In my ear for 6 hours a day, hey, taking action is more important than what action you take. Taking action is more important than what action you take. And so run the numbers, let the math decide. And there was all the nuggets, and you guys, you can lead a fish to water, but it was really taking action that did it, but all the stuff was there. And then, hey, these normal people tried it, they got burned, they came out okay, right? So it was like hundreds of stories of this. So I'm like, okay, well, I don't know what I'm doing, but the math says, there's something called the 1% rule. This deal was coming in, analyze numbers, analyze, five deals a day and make offers, analyze 10 deals a day, make offers on 3, eventually you're going to get a deal. So I started doing that, right? Exactly like it said. And so I was looking at a different property and I literally tripped over a crack on a really, really run down property, a crack in the sidewalk. And there was a for sale sign. I recognized it from the MLS. It was just super cheap. It was like, I don't know, 30 grand or something like that. And my realtor, who was a part of my core 4, he was like, hey man, this is actually a part of a 26 unit portfolio. Why don't you buy all of it? And I was like, I can do that? I never bought a house before, right? I think I made one offer before. It got rejected, made another offer, it got rejected. And so I was going to just do the standard BRRRR strategy. And so then it was more like a traditional, right? So I brought 20% down payment to a bank. They evaluated the properties, and it was, I think it was like $1.1 million. So I brought like 200 some odd grand. There's fees in there and stuff. So it was 220 grand. I ended up borrowing 50 grand from family for 6 months. And the rest I got from my portfolio in the stock market. And so I sold, created a taxable event, and was like, I've got a few months to figure out how to pay those taxes back. And so I then just rolled all of it, because I should have only had 180 grand, but I rolled all 220 into buying these properties. And so that was my first event. I first didn't know anything. I just ran the deals, and I tried to take emotion out of it and say, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't really have a core 4 yet, and I'm going to just buy. And so I ran the deals by, I think, Dave Perret, who I didn't know. I thought he was just some investor in the market. Right? I didn't know he was, really knew his stuff. And he never met me, and he's like, oh, this guy is gonna get home. He didn't want to be like, oh yeah, buy it. Yeah. He was like, well, if the numbers say it and you're comfortable, do it. So I just went off the math. The math said, hey, this is making 12 to 15 grand a month. My note's 7 grand. You should probably be able to figure it out. What
type of loan did the bank give you for that?
So I went, again, this is like mid to late stage BP. Hey, use your small local banks, right? So I just went to a local bank. I think I went through like six or 7, and later for some other deals, it was a total like 16 banks rejected me. But I only need 1 to say yes.
Yeah.
And I think by that time, maybe like towards mid stage listening to BP at that time, maybe episode 200, I started buying the books. Excuse me. Should edit that part out. No, I started buying the books, and I think it was Long Distance Real Estate Investing by David Green. Teaches you how to talk, and maybe Burr too. They teach you how to talk to a lender. So I read that chapter, or I listened to the chapter. I can't read. I have severe ADHD. I listened to it over and over and over, and I went to talk to a bank, and they thought I like really knew what I was doing. I didn't. It was my first time talking to them. But then I started getting the reps in. Right. So by the time I came around, I got a 20-year note. I think it was 10-year fixed. I don't remember the terms. This was in 2019 at the time, pre-COVID, and there was a prepayment penalty. And so, but they gave me a chance. I think it was like 20% down. And so it was 20% down. I brought $220,000 or a little bit more to the table, bought the properties, and figured it out from there.
And it's big that they let you close all those deals in one portfolio at once. Mm-hmm. With my lenders, the lender that I use the most, they have the biggest line of credit with. Whenever I buy multiple properties, I have to close each one individually, but I just close on the same day.
Right.
But I mean, you just went to 16 different people, so you got 15 no's. I never got 15 no's with all my local banks. I probably just only got 3, so I didn't find enough no's before I made that decision. Yeah,
and for me, now I'm dug in. My lender is one of my core 4, and I go to them for everything. But they're like, it's good. It's good to know the debt, and then they. I started with the national banks for practice because I'm going to get turned down a lot more. So I wanted to get those reps in before I actually hit the local lenders.
Because Bank of America will never do that.
Right. But I wanted to I wanted to know the questions that I'm going to ask, and I wasn't going to go with them anyways because they're probably not the most competitive. But yeah, it was one master note took all of them down, and that was just it's internal bank policies, right?
And when you say core 4, what is the core 4?
So the core 4 is a concept that BP, Bigger Pockets, talks about a lot. And it's your lender, your property manager, your contractor, and one more. Can't remember.
Lender, property manager, and realtor?
Oh, and your realtor, yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So basically, they're a team of experts, and they're chomping at the bit to get your business. And then if you do it right, they have the experience, you can lean on it. If you do it wrong, they can take advantage of you, or they could just be incompetent, and you lose all your money. So it's more like, hey, if you lean on your core 4, they should know enough. Well, at that point, I've been in manufacturing. I've ran teams of people in China, across a language barrier, across a cultural barrier, across multiple time zones. I can run 4 people. And so for me, it was like, okay, I'll manage these 4 people, and I'll figure it out. I'll do the math, and I'll manage the 4 people, and I'll figure everything else out because I should be able to.
So, I mean, I would say, what deal did you do next? But, I mean, you just got 26 houses.
Right.
And then now you have the logistical issue of you have to manage all 26 houses. Right. I mean, I'm assuming you got a property manager for that. What happened next?
So, like, the night before, I'm calling a bunch of property managers. These are, like, distressed properties, We joke about it, but we're like, oh, they're effectively crack houses in, like, the bad part of town.
Did you have to flip them before you could rent them?
No, we actually inherited a whole bunch of tenants. I think I had 5 vacancies when I first closed. If anyone was in our properties, we let them stay because they were paying the note. And with 5 vacancies and 21 filled, it was enough to at least break even. But I didn't really have enough for renovations. And so I've cash flowed some of the renovations, but I mainly sold stuff of mine, and then I used my W-2 income to pay for everything else. And the time was ticking, right? And then COVID happened. But as that's going on, I got a PM first. I mean, I had a PM the day before I closed. Like, I got under contract. It looks like it was going to go through. So I frantically started searching for PMs. And I basically got a personal referral from a local real estate meetup. So that was like, people have gone your way before you. They're happy to help with anything except for contractors, pretty much. So that, and then I think I went through like 3 or 4 contractors. I think everyone needs that experience of having bad contractors, which is most of contractors.
I've had a lot of experience with that. Still going with it.
And so, you just try it out, right? And, when we're talking about a $30,000 house, $20,000 house, which a lot of people in the country can't believe, there's a lot of meat on the bone to screw everything up. And so as people would move out, we'd renovate them. So I started out being able to renovate 5 properties. And, I could renovate 1 at a time. But then slowly, as we're getting renovated, new tenants are coming in, we raise the rents, I'm starting to burr them back out. And then I turn around and, again, anyone that's good.
When you burr them back out, so were you able to burr out each one individually? Like it's renovated and then?
Yes. So I was very fortunate. again, I didn't have the experience. So it was still intimidating. I was doing like the first two parts of BRRRR, right? Buy and rehab, and never did the second parts. Well, I was very transparent with the bank who gave me a shot. Hey, listen, I really appreciate you giving me a shot, but you guys don't have very good terms. I'm looking for a 25-year note or a 30-year note. You know, nationally, this is what's going on. I didn't have experience, so no one wanted to give me the shot. I appreciate you guys giving me a shot. I need better terms.
Yeah.
And so they basically took it like, we took it under consideration, but no. And so I immediately, even though they just backed me and there was a prepayment penalty, I immediately started shopping around the notes again because I knew I was going to have to burr out. And so I scalped myself to another bank, another more aggressive mom and pop bank. They came and they were like, hey, you're an experienced operator, clearly. You know what you're doing as a project manager. I could talk to banks well by that point. I could talk about the nuances of real estate by that point. And so 10 months after I started, I actually had my whole portfolio scalped from bank A to bank B, and I got back like $279,000 of the 220 or something I put in.
Oh, great. So they did all 26 properties all at once, or was it each one individual?
Nope. They pulled it all over as one note, a portfolio note. And so it's 26 houses for like 1.1 mil. And I think my note went up to like 1.3 or 1.5 when I moved over, which is like, again, it's unheard of for other parts of the country. But as I started burring out, then there were stabilized properties, unstabilized properties. All my unstabilized, rundown properties were still in the master note. Every time I burred out, I then had to take it into its individual note, which makes it easier for me, honestly.
And come from Vegas, I'm thinking all these numbers are absolutely crazy, but what's that value worth today?
Of the initial I scaled past there into like some commercial stuff, so it's kind of all tied together. But it's probably around like the $2.5 million range of value, and I've only burred it once, and that was the initial time.
So you've gotten like 1.4 million worth of value back in the past 4 years.
Probably, and I've been burring it. As I'm going along, I'm burring stuff back out. So my loans go up. So I'm sure it's not all that equity is not there, but I pulled that out to do the next deal. So if I did it right, then I'm getting that value from the next deal.
So you probably got like the low interest rates of like 2022, 2021.
Yeah. So when I got scalped, again, this is Brandon Turner, right? This is Brandon Turner talking late stage BP before he left, and he's talking about creative finance. And he's like, oh, I just negotiate on my own rates. There's Rosie's deal. Rosie's deal was the inspiration for a lot of the way I operate. Rosie's deal was he signed a 18-year mortgage for his daughter, blah, blah, blah. So there was a concept floating around, but he talked about, oh, there's an arm. Okay, well, because I'm on commercial notes. Okay, well, if there's an arm, I'm not going to sign a balloon. I'll sign an arm. How's an arm? Let's negotiate a ceiling. At the time, rates were like 3.8. So my ceiling I negotiated was like, give me a ceiling, make it an arm. Don't make me have a balloon. I'll pay the prepayment penalty if needed. And there is none because they want, if they know if I refinance out and they're good to me, I'm just going to turn around and borrow the money back again. So working with a good lender is, great. So my note ended up at a maximum, it'll go to 6.8%. Right now, Prime's at 8.75. And so first off, I'm locked in for 5 years. I'm still 3 or 4 years away from, hitting that deadline. And then, hold on a second. Sorry, got a burp.
No worries.
So I'm 3 to 4 years away from hitting, when the rates will go up. But when they do, I'm still 3 or 4 points below current Prime. So if I were to go in and try to buy the same deal today, I'm getting like 9%, 9.25%. And you can't do that.
Yeah. Take us through the numbers of where the deal's at now. So what's your mortgage on it, and how much are all those properties bringing in?
I don't know, because now I look at them as individual properties, so I'm not looking at them as one big package anymore. I can do the math and figure it out, but I know that I have enough where I'm clearing. Again, people talk doors, but I was able, basically in 15 months from when I started, I became a millionaire on paper. Doesn't mean you have $1 million in the bank. And then,
how real estate millionaires are.
Yeah,
they're rich on paper, but you can't take them out to Applebee's.
And the big thing is, like, in 26 months, I scaled to 240 doors, which is a stupid number, right? It's a doors thing, right? You want to talk about how much cash flow you're getting. And it was the middle of COVID, interest rates were rock bottom, and like something told me to buy and fix as much long-term debt as I possibly could. Buy as much as I could, because I don't think we're ever going to get this chance again. And so I just bought as much as I could. And so now I'm overextended, and I'm going to shrink it back down to maybe 180 doors because I'm definitely not. But, you know, they kicked my butt the last 2-3 years. I'm selling for more than break even the properties that are headache or, and someone else will be able to have those deals. But yeah,
So your first deal was huge, right? I mean, that's a very large, that was a sophisticated deal that you put together.
my first deal was a $1 million deal, and I only was able to do it because of like basically, I don't know, $60 worth of books from Bigger Pockets and listening to the podcast.
Insane.
No real mentorship. Well, I have real mentorship. They just couldn't talk back.
What did the next few deals look like?
So from there, I was like looking and running the numbers in the single family home space. But by that time I probably had, 10 burrs under my belt for small single family houses. And they're just a nightmare, right? I have really distressed properties. So you got to go in. I mean, you're talking like a 1940s house or an 1890s house, or 1920s house, non-grounded, knob and tube wiring, 3 layers of shingles. It wasn't taken care of.
3 layers to the shingles. Like they put drywall on top of drywall. Oh, 3 layers of shingles on the roof.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you're like not allowed to do that. You can only have 2 layers. Or
whatever that's
it
it. We could put 4 or 5 on there.
Yeah.
We could.
And then, who knows what the condition is. Like subfloors all rotted out, rafter, everything's touching the ground, So
they're sketchy.
They're sketchy houses. So I had a lot of experience I got paid to learn from the University of really crappy houses how to flip and turn houses. And so I was getting really good at estimating and stuff. So then I started looking at bigger deals, and I can't remember why I did that. So the next thing we bought was a commercial apartment, and it had 40 doors. It ended up being a motel, but it was operating in the context of an apartment. And I started learning and reading about Self-Storage Income by A.J. Osborne, and learning about the commercial space, how the levers I pull aren't competing against comps in my neighborhoods, because all the comps in my neighborhoods are low. This is like, how much money does it produce? Because it's evaluated as a business. And so I was like, oh, this is awesome. And so I basically, my second real deal, I still bought some little houses here and there if it was a good deal, right? Entrepreneurs, real estate investors. Oh, that's sweet. Let's buy it anyways. But for the most part, I'm trying to and have been transitioning to small commercial, either small apartments or retail commercial or industrial space. And they're all about $1 million deals, $850,000, $500,000, $1 million, $1.2 million, that kind of a thing. It's about the same size. And I've always played in that space because my first deal of 26 houses was like 1.1 mil.
So how are you locking those up? Like, are you searching on Loopnet? Is this commercial real estate sites?
That's a great question. So I heard a saying, and that's in the commercial space, right? Residential space, you go to the MLS to find deals. Commercial space, at least in my area, deals go to Loopnet to die, meaning everything's pretty much sold as a pocket listing for someone somewhere, and then if they can't sell, then they put it on the market, right? So no, it wasn't that. It was just happenstance, networking, knowing people, and then by that time I was running Pints Properties, which is one of Shelby Osborne's real estate meetup that's free that she made.
You know Shelby? Mm-hmm. How'd you know Shelby from Georgia? From not Georgia, from Missouri.
I didn't really know her. I just started copying what she was doing because I related to her because she's military. I was in a military school from age 10 to 22. So a lot of real estate investors were military. So I really gravitated toward their stories and stuff because I could relate to that lifestyle, even though I was never military. But so I just started my own Pints Properties meetup along with Dave Perret. Was talking about, one of the, early BP. Dave Perret started a podcast or started a real estate meetup because he was too lazy to drive across Oahu to meet with Brandon Turner. Because he's like, I don't want to deal with the traffic. I'll just start my own. And so there's nothing like that in my area. And so I just started one, right?
Yeah.
And so after meeting, so I'm constantly trying to educate local real estate investors. It grew pretty quickly. And from there, they started bringing me deals because I was helping them out, right? There's not really a community like that. There was one, but it was really salesy. It was like, I don't know, $200 a year. It wasn't expensive.
We had those too.
Yeah.
Every 5 seconds, they're selling you another thing.
Right.
When I started my meetup, we didn't sell anything, which I guess is, a bug and a benefit all at the same time.
Right. Because then At that time, I was very against spending money on masterminds and meetups and stuff, and spending money to get in rooms. Again, that was ingrained in me from early BP. It was like, don't spend the money to get in these rooms. Don't listen to a guru. You can do it all on your own. And so I wanted to always to not have to charge for Pints Properties. Yeah, grab a beer. Let's talk real estate. The downside is you get it's free, so you get a lot of trashy people, or you get a lot of like people coming in there to like solicit your group.
What do you think are the differences though with that? What's like the benefits, and what are the pros and the cons?
Every real estate meetup's going to be different. So it'll be the culture of the people that are leading it. Are they after it for money, or are they doing it as a meter? Like, so if you are $100 a month to be in my meetup, then you're excluding a whole bunch of the population. But what you're getting is probably higher caliber people who are willing to spend $100 a month to get into rooms with other people that are probably experienced and sophisticated to be in the rooms with other people who have spent that money. The downside is you're losing maybe a hustler, maybe like a 23-year-old kid who really is going to make it, but he can't afford $100 a month, or he doesn't know the value. I definitely was in that category. I wouldn't have gone to my own meetup had I charged money for my meetup at the time when I went in. So I see the value and I see the benefit, but that's why it's still free.
Me starting off, I would have never paid money for anything. Right. But if you are renting out a hotel room, I'm okay with paying $20, $30 because I know that I have to compensate costs. Right. But I never paid like hundreds. I mean, now I paid, $18,000 to get into Collective Genius. Right. But I'm at a time and a scale that there's other benefits to that I can't really talk about on the microphone. Right. But there's other things. So now I'm at the moment to where it makes sense. But when I think of, in my meetup, I think a successful meetup is 25% new people each and every time, because that shows that it's growing. You want the people who are there, but you want the new blood. But when people are starting off and maybe they're not a sophisticated investor, they don't know what they're doing. Right. But if you could teach them to do it, one, you helped another person, but then it benefits you too because they're bringing all the deals to you. I don't know if you got that.
That's exactly right. So people were like, hey, Hugh, you're listening, and then there's a lot of intentionality behind it. So we'll be like, hey, in our meetup, we have to give your name, what your strategy is, about the size you are, what you want help with, and then what you could help someone else with. That's what we say at every one of our meetups, right? And then it's networking for the bulk of it. We'll bring presenters in too. Every other one is a presenter. But I'll be like, oh yeah, I'm looking for a small commercial, and it looks like this. Well, when real estate investors are starting out, they're hungry and they're hustlers. Maybe they're doing driving for dollars, and they'll see something I had no idea about, and they'll bring something to me. When you get into this, there's this weird niche, and every market will be a different price point, but it'll definitely be the case in every market will be this price point. Not the numbers I'm going to say, but there is a price in your market that this works. There is a sweet spot where things are too expensive for normal investors, but then they're too small for REITs to give a crap about them. So in my market, it's like $400,000 and up for like an apartment complex. Yeah, it's probably like $500,000 to $600,000. And below, so it's like a 6-plex and above or 7-plex and above, but below a 20-plex. So if it's below a 20-plex, there's not enough meat on the bone for more than 2 people, maybe even 1 person. But if you can take it down with 1 person, that's good. If you buy something for $1 million, and I'm only bringing 15% down now, it's $150,000 I bring down, and the bank's going to supply the rest. Okay, well, I'm not saying $150,000 isn't a lot of money, but I've been doing this for 3 years. I've had the appreciation. I've bird out the money. I can raise that $150,000 from my own properties, take down $1 million property. Now, why am I buying $1 million property? Because the 1% rule and it being under market value, and I'm buying a headache. Again, my market, I still have that, luckily. I think it's worth, a $1.5 million property. I'm buying it with some meat on the bone. Or really, there's no meat on the bone because they're mismanaging it. They're mom and pops. They don't have a note. They bought it in 1983 for $20,000, or $50,000, and the roof went out. And now they're going to cost them $30,000. They don't want to put the money into it.
I'm assuming they're probably not the most savviest operators either.
Right. A lot of mom and pops I find, even if they were savvy, they're either their brain's stuck in old pricing, or they don't have systems. Most of them don't have systems and processes. I think there's this demographic, if you're like 50 and up, and if you're not that, and you're savvy, don't be offended. But you can learn, maybe weaponize this against, where you're out there hunting deals. There's a lot of older mom and pops that trip over dollars to pick up dimes. I would never spend. I remember, I'm not going to say the name because I might buy this guy's apartment complex. 18 unit apartment complex, 970 grand or something like that. Uh-huh. Horribly mismanaged, under market rents, has vacancy. Dude's works full-time at the university. And in the same sentence, I gave him my underwriting. I can't buy it for that. I got a 10%, here's my fees, here's overhead, here's costs. And he read the line that said property management, 10%, right? And I overbid that, I pay less. But he's like, why would you pay 10% to somebody? In the same paragraph, the same conversation, he's like, I would never pay that. You can do this yourself, blah, blah, blah. And then he's like, yeah, in the last 10 years, I've never gone home to see my family in Malaysia. Mm. And I'm not going to educate him because I'm trying to buy his place, but he's tired. He's maybe late 60s, early 70s. He's done. He wants this property gone. He's not sophisticated, and he doesn't care because his note's almost nothing. He's making a crap ton of money, not really paying attention to it. And if some idiot, some wet behind the ears kid is going to come and pay him $1 million for something he bought for 300 grand, 20 years ago, let that kid make all the mistakes. What an idiot. Look at this kid.
18 units for $970,000. What's the rents on each one of those units?
They were under rented. They were like $450 to $500 a month. Market values, they should have been at that time, they should have been $675, $700, $750. This is for a 1-bedroom, 1-bath.
So he's getting $9,000 a month, and then it should be $650. So $650 times 18, yeah. We're at 1,100 and 11,700.
Yeah, so he should have been getting $11,000 a month, and he was getting 9, or maybe it was even less. Maybe he was under renting.
So $9,000, he should be getting 11,700.
Right. Maybe he's only at $400 a month or something like that for some of the properties. But that's not why I would raise rents. I raise rents because the type of tenant that can only afford $400 a month is not the type of tenant you want in a property because it's going to create a lot of headaches.
And did you say they were 1-bed, 1-bath?
1-bed, 1-bath, about $400 is what they were renting at the time. And this is the type of deal that I'm currently.
Now, let me challenge you with this. I got the sweetest deal from I think also Missouri, right? Right around Kansas City or something like that. Amazing deal, crazy amount of units for very underpriced. And then I brought to Alex and I was going to see if he would partner in with me. And he said it was stupid, which obviously Alex is an idiot, but he said there's a lot of 1-bed, 1-baths there. And he said, don't touch anything with a lot of 1-bed, 1-baths because who lives there? Not people with families, not people with kids. So it's very cyclical. They're always moving in, always moving out. You always have vacancies. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm going to go back to something that Brandon Turner says. Every property has a price. That's number one. Number two, location, location, location. So if I'm looking at a place that's right by the university, cool. It's probably going to be set up for student housing. Make sure you don't say that in advertising and stuff because, HUD things. But there's going to be a play for that. Absolutely. If you have a lot of small units, you have that. But we actually find a lot of young professionals are living in 1-1s. So really, it's what part of town is it in, and what can you do? So you can price that demographic out of the area. People don't like it when I say that, but I'm not going in raising the rents on everybody. If the people that are there are respectful, they're not trashy, they're not tearing the place up, they're not causing problems, they can stay there as long as they want. I don't care that the rents are lower. I just need to buy it that covers my note. As people move out, I'll go and I'll turn the place, make it better, do the repairs, make it far nicer than it is, and I'll place the appropriate tenant. Now, you're not going to get the good tenant if you have, the guy who has a car torn apart in over 3 spaces, or the guy who leaves trash everywhere, or the weird guy who's threatening to stab people. Yeah. So you might have to get some of those people out. But it's usually, again, depending where you're at, it's usually pretty easy because they're also probably not paying rent, or they're doing other violations.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. I'll go partners with you on that one, by the way.
Well, but yeah, so definitely underwrite your market, right? If everything's a 2-1 and you're trying to compete against 1-1 and with a 1-1, you got to look at that.
Yeah.
Maybe you have and that was one of my strategies too. I would look, this is back to single family houses, I would look for a 2-1 that was 1,100 square feet or more. because I know there's a bonus room, and I'm going to throw up a, $1,200, 3,000 square foot or $3,000 wall. I'm going to create $20,000 of value.
If you see a lot of 1-1s, do you factor in a higher vacancy rate?
I don't, because our area has a lot of 1-1s naturally, because the old part of the town where this is in, historically in the 1920s, there weren't apartments. They were starter homes. So you and your wife would, buy a small home and then you'd move to a bigger home later. Now, young people live in an apartment and then they buy a forever home, maybe a 3-2 or something.
See, that's what I'm looking at. I would think that the demographic would kind of be using that as like a stepping stone. Like, okay, I'm going to move out of my parents' house. I'm going to go here. I just moved to the city. I'll move here for like a year, 9 months, something like that. And then I'll leave and get a real house.
And what I'll do is I'll improve the property. I'll do my best not to over improve the property, but I'll make it nice. Or I'll spend the money on the little things, like I'll tile a shower. Why? Because it's not that much more in raw materials to make it nice versus, dropping in the square footage is small, get the premium stuff because it's such a small area. Maybe match that to the backsplash in the kitchen. Yeah, it's the little tips and tricks. But then I price in the market for a young professional or a retired couple. So I actually find a lot of people, like a lot of retired couples, hey, let's live in town, babe. Kids are gone. We're empty nesters. Let's go rent a little bit before we find our next place. I'm going to sell my 5-bedroom, 4-bath behemoth. Our kids are in college now. We're done. I'm tired of cleaning. I'm tired of mowing. Let me go there. So it's how you run your property, right? And that'll be an answer for what your strategy is in your demographic, in your area.
You've taken on a lot of deals that are like less traditional. Like a lot of people getting into real estate, they're just buying 3-2 single family residential or 2-1 or 3-1 or something, kind of just the starter homes. It's easy. It's easy to understand. It's more
easier to do what I did.
Really?
It's easier to do what I did. There's less competition. You're competing when you're the guy coming in and you are competing for a 2-1 or a 3-2 and it's on the MLS, you've got hundreds of thousands of people that are also going after it. Maybe not that many, but depending on your demographic. You've got to make the numbers work. There's all these, you're probably on a conventional note, 30 years, your Fannie Freddie Mac stuff. When I'm coming into a mom and pop, to a distressed property, and we're the only hope that they have of being the easy button to solve their problem, how about we give you money and we're going to take this headache off your hands? How's that sound? How about you've been killing yourself for $9,000 a month and really you get to keep $5,000 a month? What if I paid you $3,000, you didn't do anything, right? It's easier because the people that I play against are more sophisticated. And like, even I'm getting to that point. I'm now at the point where I don't want the headache properties, but I have the income to justify that. I'm buying more and more turnkey or things that are closer to turnkey, and I'm not looking at those same properties. So that means the me of 2 years ago can now buy what I was buying last year because I'm tired of dealing with that demographic. But I never would have learned that had I not dealt with the headache stuff. I never would have learned that had I not bought all the little crack houses.
That leads me to my next question is, what is the challenges that you faced looking at these deals?
I think the biggest challenge I've ever faced is not underwriting enough and being too confident going in. There's one very specific area. I did not underwrite the area. It was in a town that was close to my town. I thought my systems and processes would reach. And it was like 40 minutes out. And we did not underwrite. I partnered with that one. We did not underwrite the market well enough, right? So our systems didn't reach that far. Our contractors didn't want to go that far. Our plumbers, our HVAC guys didn't want to deal with it. Then there's the smaller towns. Sometimes you'll have, I'm going to call it small town, big dick energy. They're like, I'm the inspector. You can't get around. I'm the guy. Like you might get some of that, and they'll be bullies, right? It's like a person who peaked in high school, right, as a quarterback, and then now they live in this no-name town, and then they're like the city planner or something.
That's every inspector or appraiser ever.
Okay, yeah. So
in every town, every city, they're all dicks.
Okay, well,
they all never got enough love as a child.
Normally, like if I'm in the city, and I'm in a small area, right? It's like 480,000 people for the metroplex, like maybe 180,000 for the actual city. there's at least other inspectors that come through. You can get it done if you're willing to jump through the red tape and the hoops. But I didn't underwrite the market well enough. So we did it. We did the burst strategy. We executed the right way. We increased the numbers. We did the things. But in the market that I'm in, most of my real estate, I see a trend of appreciation and growth and population and higher income. In this market, we thought it would be the same way. Didn't do our due diligence enough. Also, we bought it from mom and pop. We didn't underwrite it hid enough. He basically was bad at bookkeeping. So he gave me the numbers. He gave us the numbers that he thought. And I was like looking at them like, yeah, these look right. Right?
Yeah.
These look right, but there was like way more, right? And then he was also not accounting for him being a mom and pop. He did a lot of the labor. He did a lot of the hours that I'd have to pay for. That wasn't factored in, right? So there's some lessons learned there. But the biggest thing is getting better underwriting. There's, people say as you get better and better at your real estate journey, a lot of investors I see will not take underwriting very seriously. And that included me until I got burned. Now I will not hand off the final underwriting. Right? I will make sure I'm like, have we thought of this? Have we thought of that? The really sophisticated investors do not get underwriting wrong, or they've learned from all their bumps and scrapes and bruises. So that was my biggest challenge I faced was
not underwriting enough.
And I'm talking about this like it's a horrible deal. Like we went in, it was 2 apartment complexes and a hotel. We're gonna, there's a partnership of 3 of us. I think we were collectively $300,000 total, $100,000 each. Probably put a crap ton more into it. So we're probably all in for $180 each. We're probably going to pull out $300 each when we sell all of this 2 years later. Yeah. But the reason we're not holding is because the market's not going to grow. We've already raised rents to where they're going to get. The buildings aren't going to appreciate more. We're not going to be able to see that growth over time like we were used to. And that was totally on us not understanding the market we were buying in. We got cocky. I got cocky. And those are the ones that were, oh, look at me, 240 doors. But how much money are we making? Like cash flow's king. So I'm going to slim back down to maybe like 160, 180. But really, it's not about the numbers. It's about being closer to my systems and processes.
And how many units is that deal?
15, 25, and 40. So
80.
Yeah, about 80 units or so.
Cool.
And it came with a single family house too. It was actually funny. It came in on a mailer. So it was direct mail mailer. Let me solve your problem by paying you less than your house is worth. And that guy was like, you can buy my house, but you have to buy everything. Well, what's everything? Well, everything is 2 apartments and a hotel. We underwrote it. We saw the value, under market rents, all this stuff. We did BRRRR correct. It was just in a market that's not going to give us the sustained long-term growth.
Are you allowed to keep the 2 apartments and sell the hotel?
We can, but we're just not going to. Like, in order to really make it in that area, best thing to do is scale large enough in that market to have a team and new systems and processes in that market.
Is that the hotel where a guy died in the pool?
Yeah, there was a gal who passed away in the pool. We had opened up to like a domestic violence center where we partnered with a local team in town. If people were trying to get away, they would pay for a hotel room. She ended up getting intoxicated probably and fell in the pool. It's currently in a lawsuit right now. So I can talk more about it later, but basically, yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of things. Actually, dead bodies is a kind of a interesting story. The more you scale, you're going to have like a dead body a quarter if you're buying the properties with meat on the bone. So like if you're buying a distressed property, it probably has distressed people or older people in them. And so we've never had a murder. We've had an overdose. We've had a lot of old elderly people pass away in the properties, but we had a suicide once. But it's like no one talks about it in real estate. Like you're gonna run into dead bodies, and that's like a thing that no one thinks about. Like account for it. That's gonna be part of your CapEx expense.
Jesus, it's something you never think about.
Yeah,
and then when you guys were talking about it, I'm like, oh my God, what did he do?
I think I'm up to 10 dead bodies as of 2 weeks ago.
Was there any that you walked in on yourself, or they call in?
No, it'd be like they wouldn't pay for rent, or people would know, the neighbors would kind of let us know. Most of the time, it's not a big deal. Not that it's not a big deal, but you call the paramedics. They have next to kin, they have family. You let them know. They come grab their things. It becomes an issue when they have no family, or if there's a biohazard cleanup. Worst one was guy took a 12 gauge. Guy pays rent. We bought a property, took it over. 6 days later, 6 days into owning this property, brand new, not brand new property, brand new ownership of the property. Dude paid it a rent, shot himself in the head with a 12 gauge shotgun in August. Didn't turn the AC on. We didn't find him until like 3 weeks later.
Oh God! And
so it was like biohazard cleanup. I mean, it was very involved. You have to get certain things taken care of. But we have a great property management company. Our property management company was like, "Oh, we deal with that all the time. Here we go. Here's the answer. We'll take care of it. This is going to cost you money."
What is the systems and processes? Do they have to remove the flooring? Do they have to bleach things? Do they have to?
Yeah, you've got to. You have to have a biohazard team gut the place.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So like, even if you just renovated it, which luckily that unit wasn't, you've got to basically do everything to it. If there's a biohazard event, right? If someone passes away, paramedics, take them and, it's pretty much fine.
And because there's a police report and documentation, does insurance cover that?
It will. Yeah. And it'll all come back to the situation. So it's insurance, liability will. And again, when you most of the people we've had pass away are elderly people. And it's normally natural causes.
Yeah.
We had an overdose in one of our units. There was like a 18-year-old kid who was partying. It was like October, so it was cold, which was good. He like OD'd. There were two other people partying with him, and he OD'd in his place. And I guess the other two people found out. They knew, but they like left him there or something like that. So Monday we found him because rent was due. And that's when, the police had some investigation over the other people that were partying. But that was kind of a sad one because it was a kid who OD'd.
Yeah, it's just a kid. So you've had a lot of partners on your properties. What is your strategy with that? And how's it gone wrong? How's it gone right?
That's a great question. So I've seen my parents be taken advantage of in partnerships all the time. So when I started in real estate investing, I was adamantly against partnering with anyone. As I got more and more and more and more around people that were very high net worth, very wealthy individuals in real estate, everyone partners with everyone all the time.
Yeah.
And so I think the worst mistake I made is I undervalued the value that I provide. Right. I was like, I'll take 30% ownership, but I'll do all the work. You bring the money. You bring the money. I'll do all the work. I'll get like 30% ownership or 20% ownership. No, like from now on, if I'm going into like a apartment complex that's distressed, you can bring the money. The best deal I'm going to give you is 50% ownership. All you brought was money,
So they bring in all the money and they only get 50%.
They bring in all the money, but they only get 50%. Why? Well, all the problems I just described. We're dealing with the tenants, the city. They couldn't do it without us. And I mean, we could do it with money. Money is the easiest part of any real estate transactions. When you're like an OG, like when you're a beginner investor, you're like, oh my gosh, money's the biggest hurdle. No. Get the skill set, find the correct deal, and money will appear. I didn't believe it until it started happening. People were like, hey, I have $1 million. Can I start investing with you? And I was like, no, I don't want your money. Like, I don't need your money. And, I'm going to keep doing things at the pace I'm doing them at. Sometimes I don't trust people like that sometimes too. So underwrite your partners.
And when you say you don't trust people like that too, like
that specific person, but it was like, I don't know.
I'll say you,
okay.
I'll tell you what I think, or just a situation that's happened to me. I've had people say, oh, Jay will lend you the money. And then, when you get a deal, have us. So boom, I lock something up in the contract. I say, okay, yeah. So let's do that loan. And then they say, oh, well, not now because of this reason. Or, oh no, we're just feeling a little insured because of this or that. Or, oh, we want to do this other thing. And then they don't perform.
Right.
And then when you don't perform, now I'm left like, hey, I just put this earnest money on the property.
Yeah.
It's under contract. I mean, if I cancel one, that's making my name look bad. Two, if I do it,
right.
2
to 3 times.
2 to 3 times, or I might lose my earnest money. but I have a reputation for closing deals. No matter what, I got to close the deal.
Right.
So I don't like when it comes to individual investors or investors who don't invest all the time. If you invest in everybody's real estate deal, then I know you're going to perform because you're going to have no anxiety about it. Right. But if it's somebody who never invests in things and they just know that I do things, so they want to kind of just get on the train, they get scared. Yes. They get, everybody's investor until it's time to pull the trigger. And they get that trigger reluctance. So
my best luck with partnerships are other investors. Like if you and me went on a deal, and you're a flipper, and like I know my market, and I burr.
Like I won't have anxiety about shit. I'll just throw you the money.
Whatever. Oh my God, this okay. Like oh my gosh, the plumbing's crap. There's clay pipes, there's trees growing in all the roots, and it's going to cost. If you have I got a great piece of advice once, and it was if you have a problem. Mm-hmm. And that problem can be solved with money. You don't have a problem. You have an expense.
Yes.
And that's really, I was like, oh, okay. I just reframed the way I looked at any real problem. For the most part, in real estate, most problems can be solved with money. It's some kind of distress to a property. And and then it depends on the split, right? Am I doing all the work? Because if you are, Jay, are you coming to my market? I'm doing all the work. I'm taking a bigger piece of the pie. If you don't have to do anything, you just throw money your way, you get a good, ROI, and then we get a burr out of it. That's great. Mm-hmm. Or am I investing in you where I'm giving you money? Or are we both in the same market? We're both going to do the deal, right? So it's kind of wild west, but underwrite your partners. Prepare for things to go horribly. Have all that conversation up front before you buy. Have an exit strategy and be open and honest. I have a friend right now who's going through a partnership split where he and another dude went in on a property when things were great during COVID. Right, COVID money, then the market flipped, and now they're both now one guy's deal was to bring all the money, other guy's deal was to do all the work. Now they both have to bring money, and it's a bad situation. But then the other guy's got problems with his other real estate because the market turned. It's no one's fault. The two of them didn't discuss it or plan beforehand, and so it's like, what kind of mature, what kind of how are you going to jive with that partner in rough times? Right, so just kind of having that stuff in place.
Have you been burnt by any partners?
No.
Not
yet. Not yet. Probably I will, but
you probably have some to where
I've had many. I just didn't get an uneasy feeling about. Like maybe they seem
probably
high
would
maintenance.
Do it again, or the high maintenance.
Yeah, like they seem high maintenance, and I'm like, you seem like there's something. Trust your gut, right? Your gut is smart. Any bad decision that I've ever made, if you really think back to before the decision was made, there's a good chance that your gut was telling you something about don't do it. And then you attempted to logic your way out of it. And so I don't know, especially if you're going to enter a partnership and there's a shit ton of money on the line, make sure you know who's responsible for what, be crystal clear, keep open communication, and you'll be okay, hopefully, right? Mm-hmm. Let's say someone in your partnership marriage falls apart and, they get sued or something like that. You can't plan for that stuff, but you need to know what's going to happen if that does happen, because then it leads to like say there's a 3-person partnership. One person has a really bad time. Now 2 people are putting in more effort. The other person's not. I mean, you gotta just be prepared to come up with something. Yeah. Is that guy going to pay back on the back end? What's going to happen? Is he going to put in more sweat equity because he can't raise the money right now?
I'm in a partnership right now to where I don't like partners. I don't like doing it. She brought me the deal, and then she said, I'm like, I'll just buy you out of it. I'll buy it. Well, she's like, I really want to learn how to flip, so I want to do this with you. So bought the deal with her, and all the money's supposed to be shared 50-50, right? I mean, I'm probably going to manage things more, but if you want to learn how to flip, that means you're going to do some of it too, right?
Right.
I'm putting in like 90% of the money.
Right.
I mean, she just never has the money, not performing on anything, not answering the calls, and not doing anything with the rehab or renovation.
Right.
Nothing. But then calling me, asking me for progress reports as if I work for her, which I don't. This is not that situation.
And you were doing a favor for someone who was trying to learn.
Yeah.
I think you underwrote that partnership incorrectly.
There was so much meat on this deal. It was insane. So,
okay.
I mean,
So knowing that if you're okay going in.
You could have probably bought the deal for $180,000 and it would be a great deal. We got it for $120,000.
Wow.
So it was significantly underpriced.
Right.
And it's because of that, I mean, if it's an absolute steal, then I'll do it.
Right.
But speaking of that, when you're looking at your apartment buildings or lower end commercial,
Smaller commercial,
are you getting, like, everything I get is about undervalue, but are you looking at terms? Are you doing things on terms? Are you negotiating with sellers like that?
Yeah,
or
so
my whole strategy is just like, what's it worth and how much could I get it for if it's a distressed situation?
So I love creative finance. I'm not very good at it. I'm not the best. I know what I know. You know, again, a lot of my stuff goes back to like late stage BP where they're talking about creative finance. I think they have a book on creative finance, but it'd be like, I'll hit them with 3 offers. 1, an all cash offer at like a significantly lower price, and I'll draw that on a line of credit. 2, you know, something in the middle. 3, the seller carry. We'll pay you more than you're asking, but give us terms. And that really works with some mom and pops. Like, if they don't have any debt on it and they can be the bank, like there's a lot of meat on the bone for stuff that you can take over. So I really like to do creative financing if I can. And honestly, that does work really well for real estate, for residential real estate. You just have to explain it properly. You have to communicate it. You can't be like, yo, do you do seller financing? And they'll be like, oh my God, what's that? That sounds illegal. You'd be like, hey, what if I gave you 10 grand now? What if I gave you 15 grand now? And I'll just pay you $600 a month for the next 10 years. You know, how's that sound? Are you cool with that? You know, I'll take the property off your hands. You don't worry about it. It's a headache anyways. You know, what do you want to do? And so there's books on that. I'm not the best at it, but you got to be able to communicate it in not an awkward way. Because, you know, you have an 80-year-old grandma. She's not going to know how that works. On the flip-flop side, again, I'll often make 2 to 3 offers of the same deal to the same person. So it's like, if you're selling a house, Jay, I'll give you 3 offers. And that does 2 things. Instead of saying yes or no to my offer, you have to, different parts of your brain is engaged. Do I want A or B? Not yes or no. Or do I want A, B, or C? And here's why. And I'll often run the numbers of what I can pay for a property with the person in front of them. And, you know, the last thing is like, do you agree? I'm doing this as a business. I got to make something on it. Let's say 10%. Tack it on. This is the max I can pay for your house. I'm sorry. Or you give them that. Do you know which offer makes it if I give 3 offers?
Which one?
My offer. Right. Maybe, most of the time, right?
Yeah.
So like, and I get a lot of that from like never split the difference tactics and building tactical empathy, psychology more, and just being able to communicate in a not crazy way. Like you and I'll geek out about cap rates and all this stuff. You can't do that with you can't do that with a mom and pop.
I mean, so even when they are real estate investors, they own real estate,
right?
But you still kind of dumb it down a little bit.
So there's Taishi Ono is the grandfather of lean manufacturing, and he has something called Ono's Precepts, and he said, explain things in an easy to understand manner. Repeat things that are easy to understand. And so I'm the first person always, and you may have noticed it this weekend hanging out with you. I'll be the first person to be like, hey, listen, I didn't understand that. Can you explain that to me like I'm 5? Or like I'm a 5th grader? And then after they explain it, I'll be like, hey, I'm going to explain what you just told me, and please correct me if I'm wrong. So I understand that I understood it correctly. There's some psychology behind why I'm doing that. It helps me learn faster. But whether I'm dealing with brokers or lenders or whatever, you ask them, hey, could you explain that to me like I'm in the 5th grade? They go into a different mode. It builds empathy. They're now teaching, and then they're I've never been in a situation where someone couldn't dumb it down. And like sometimes people use big words to use big words, and it's not necessary. If you can explain it to Einstein said, if you can't explain it to your grandma, you don't understand it.
Yeah.
And you got to be able to do that. The more you can do that, the better success you're going to have. If you're a real estate investor, I know a lot of dumb ones, but most people are pretty with it. Most people you're buying from may not be, or they just don't care. You know, they're dealing with a family event, right? Mom died, and we live out, and the kids live out of state, and then mom was a hoarder, and it's in bad condition, and you're just educating them a little bit and saying, listen, I can take it off your hands. Here's 3 ways. If you put it on the market, you're going to get more, but here's what you're going to need to do to it. Probably. You don't have to buy from us. Good luck. Here's, we can buy it this way. You guys let us pay you over a year, whatever. You can figure it out, right? But dumb it down, and then repeat the easy things. You actually taught me this the other day. When a contractor screws up work for you, usually it's not because they don't know what their job is. It's because they did not understand what you were requesting.
Yes.
They're a contractor. They know how to put the floor in. They know how to do the thing. They thought you meant something else, and you were at fault because you didn't clearly articulate it and then repeat it over and over.
Always state the obvious.
Right.
And then I will say the same things over and over and over again. My team probably thinks I have autism, but I say it and I say it again and I say it again just so that everybody knows what I want in this situation, so that everybody knows what's going to happen here. Because, you hire them because they know how to do their job. Right. You hire them because they're good. So if they do something wrong, it's because there's a miscommunication. And 99% of the time, that's what happened. Right. They're not trying to screw you. They didn't make a mistake. They didn't whatever. It was just a misunderstanding. Misunderstandings happen. People are people.
Right.
People will always be people.
And again, the easiest takeaway from the whole seller financing thing is you don't want to be like, hey, I can buy it from you this much at this rate over a 30-year AM. And you're just freaking them out. No, you do the math. You know your gut feeling. Maybe you have a calculator app on your phone that'll do the rates for you. Hey, how about I pay you $600 a month for 10 years, and I'll give you $20,000 right now? Would you do that? What's easier? They don't need to know all the others. You might be able to pay them more and or you might be able to pay them the same and get a 0% note because you're kind of pay them $500 a month and they're notes, whatever their loans, $200 a month. Yeah. Now they're making money and they moved out of the place and they don't care, right? We know, interest, blah, blah, blah. We know all these things. They don't know that. A lot of people don't anyways.
Yeah, that's good. Well, hey man, where can people find you? Actually, before that, you have a YouTube channel that's not even about real estate. It's about gardening.
Yeah, so I have 2 YouTube channels. One is about real estate, finance, and business. It's not my main one. It's probably on the screen right now if you see the logo. And but then my bigger YouTube channel is about homesteading, called the Hillbilly Homestead. And I basically applied the same lean manufacturing principles to gardening, right? Gardening seems high effort, food production. It's often a big hassle. You have naysayers being, you got to have this much NPK in your soil, and the tomato plants need this kind of amendments. And I'm like, no. Overcomplicating it to do it. I'm going to get 80% of the results that they do. They're definitely they're right, they're better. But I'm going to have little to no effort. I don't even water my garden. My garden is set up where it self-waters naturally. I don't weed the garden. I don't do anything. I plant in the spring and I harvest in the fall. And I keep it. So it's called the Hillbilly Homestead. But it's all lean principles. To me, everything's the same. The way I view the world is the same. I applied lean manufacturing principles to personal finance, and I became a millionaire in 15 months. I applied it to real estate, and I had 240 doors in 26 months. I applied it to gardening. I'm now scaling a homestead, and I'm doing it for fun on the side, right? It's all the way you view the world. Everything's a process. My background's a system, a process engineer, and everything's a system process. You can systematize everything.
Nice. So where can you say that channel one more time and then your real estate channel?
Okay. So I have the Hillbilly Homestead on YouTube, and then I've got Hugh Carnahan channel also on YouTube. But I have some socials, my Instagram, and that's pretty much it. And I'm also known as the Hillbilly Millionaire.
Perfect. Well, hey, it's been fun having you down. Seriously. Been a great week. Talk to you later, guys.
Thanks for having me, Jay.
Yes.